Hi, I'm Michael,
And I'm Abby.
and we're here for another episode of The Pricing Guys. So, today, Abby, what I want to get into is the topic of AI. And specifically, kind of how is AI influencing not only our business world, but the pricing practice in particular. But I want to start out with some of the comments that came out of the CEO of Microsoft.
Yeah, and I think he had a podcast just the other day, Satya, and he made some interesting comments because a year ago he was talking about, we got to lean in more to AI. It's gonna kind of get into everything, but it was interesting. His comments were around like, AI hasn't necessarily hit its Excel moment yet.
I like
Um,
that. Hasn't hit its Excel moment.
The
That's a
other
nice
thing
one,
he
huh?
was talking to is like, if we're saying AI is the industrial revolution, well, it should be producing the same kind of economic returns or growth patterns as we saw from the industrial revolution. So thinking about that, just everyone being a bit more practical and making sure they're a bit more reasonable with what their expectations are and where we are within this now versus kind of being in fantasy world,
Well,
right?
it's hard for me to understand how much of it is real because you see Chat GPT, you see the power. Seems like everybody's selling some AI solution today, but is this just hype, right? Is this 5 years ago, it was blockchain, blockchain, blockchain. 10 years ago, it was analytics and it's shaping the world. And how much of it is reality versus block
You know
versus
what?
hype?
It's funny because we can even talk about, what we've seen from analysts, even our analysts, right? And their
Yep.
use of ChatGPT. So we'll be reviewing some of the outputs. And it's just it's not that it's bad, but it's not like how we would write or how we would express things. And then not necessarily where we would want to go. The other thing is we get blah, it's great, but you have to write a really long prompt into ChatGPT. So before I ask ChatGPT anything, I'm going to write like a half a page.
Yeah.
And it was funny because one of our people were actually saying this. I write a prompt half a page, and it was like writing an email. I'm like, well, why didn't you just write the damn email, right? Instead of writing this half a page.
Yeah. It's weird because when I see stuff like that, it makes me think that, oh, we're progressing so much and we're getting smarter, but at the same time, are we getting stupider? Like, are we losing that ability to actually think and be human? What I was reading this article, and it was these software engineers out of Silicon Valley, and the guy's talking about how, well, these senior engineers, they're getting really pissed off with the junior young guys who are coming in, and why they're getting pissed off is because they're saying these guys don't know how to write code.
Mm-hmm.
And like they're starting, like they're working like software engineer, they went to school, and it's because they're using all these like AI hacks and AI things to help them write code. And he says, like, look, the code's not bad, but the issue is like when the code doesn't work for something very, very specific, they can't actually take that code and adapt it. And they ask them, like, why did you do this? Is the answer is, well, that's what the AI told me to do. So are these people actually thinking, or are they just copying and pasting out of some AI engine?
I guess as I'm kind of reflecting on what you're saying, where I immediately go to is two things. One is as companies are bringing in, like, very clear that, we're looking for data scientists or we're looking for people with these skills. So I want them to have R, I want them to be able to do SQL, whatever it is, right? It's much easier for people to put that on their resume because you can go and pull this stuff and you
Yep.
cobble it
Yep.
together. The second thing is, as you bring these people into your organization, let's kind of be frank, like with these directors that you're putting these people under, no one's going to go through their code. And as you see outputs that come out of this, who knows if it's right or not, right? If you don't have that kind of second set of eyes that you can really set it through. And what's kind of scary in some instances is, yeah, you have the trust in, we wrote this code, we ran it through, it's got we've got these Bayesian algorithms behind it and whatnot. But how are you really gut checking this stuff? How do you really make sure it makes sense? And especially when we get into big portfolios, hundreds of thousands of SKUs, different elasticities, different channels. like with and like thousands of customers, like the complexity just gets astronomical.
Well, and that's a great point because I see that in our world of pricing all the time. And people are buying these immense systems, like millions and millions and millions of dollars spent, and it's giving some kind of output. And the executives are coming back and they're like, well, I spent a couple $1,000,000 on this system. Why are my results not improving? And 90% of the time when we start digging down, it's, oh, the system spits something out and I take that and I run with it. And nobody's looking at what the system is spitting out and nobody's gut checking that to say, does this make sense? Can I actually implement this? Should I be doing this? Rather, they're just kind of passing it on. And I've seen companies like put in strategies that are like upside down. They don't make any sense. And when you ask them why they did it, it's well, that's what our pricing engine kind of said. And it's the question I ask, well, did you challenge the pricing engine? No, that's what the AI said. And it's really, really scary because it makes me think that not only as pricing professionals, but as humans, we're losing that ability to think critically. We're losing that ability to understand what is the problem that I'm actually solving because these people don't know what problem they're solving. They're just getting the output and like kind of pushing it on and hoping that they have success.
I think what's funny, because what you're describing, it's usually, we get the recommended price and it's a salesperson that's looking at that and they go, okay, garbage, right? And they go and
Yep.
do whatever they're going to do. And that's kind of that sniff test that's happening. And it's just not meeting that level, right? Because granted, what the system pushed out doesn't make sense. But what your 1,000 reps out on the street that are going to go negotiate on all these incremental variables out there, that's not going to get all your opportunity as well. It's somewhere in between, and thinking about how to make sure you've got that market level sophistication that they definitely have, how you are getting a system that makes sense for you, and you're bringing those two things together. Because a lot of times, it can't just be one, or it's, well, if you're doing one or the other, you're definitely missing opportunity on both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, and the thing that I think about when you say that is that there's that human aspect to a lot of businesses, and it's very much an art and a science, especially pricing, right? There's definitely a science to it. We could go calculate elasticities. We could understand what the impact is to our own portfolio in the market, all those good things. But there's also the art aspect to it where now that I have the numbers, now that I know what my strategy is, I need to go convince somebody to buy. I need to convince them to accept a price change. I need to be able to weave that story together. And I think AI is super powerful in helping with the science portion. We can run elasticities quicker than we ever have. We could do market comparisons quicker than we ever have, but we can't lose that art. We can't lose that. How do we bring it together? How do we tell the story? And how do we actually execute it? Because you could have the best strategy on paper. If you can't actually execute it in the market, it's worthless. The $1,000,000 or $2,000,000 that you spend on this tool, if you do not have the people in the story to be able to go execute it, that's why you're not seeing results. At the end of the day, it's just a fancy piece of hardware or sorry, software.
Yeah, 100%. And to your point, right? As you talk about what AI helps us, like if we're saying take AI, let's clean up the data. Yeah, amazing. It can
100%.
it can get
It's
us there
great.
much faster. Let's go scrape off. Let's go scrape and kind of do comparisons. 100%. Now, as we talk about, you know, what is our corporate strategy and where we want to grow and what we want to do and how do we make our pricing strategy fit that? Well, that's much more dynamic. That's much more complicated. That is much more subtle. And thinking about how you need to fit that, which customers you need to win, how we need to position, like that's where we call it art, but a lot of it's not I mean, there's some art too, but it's a lot of sophistication and intellect that you're just never going to get there because things move too quickly. And granted, we might get there when we're in kind of like Terminator time. But we're not necessarily there right now.
The other thing that comes to mind when you kind of say that too is that AI, it's a very ambiguous term. What does it actually mean? And I think back to, it used to drive me crazy years ago. You know,
I
I'm a
know what story you're going to tell
I'm a
here.
math guy, right? It's the
Yeah.
analytics one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm a math guy. For those of you who don't know, and when like people first started talking about analytics, it drove me nuts because analytics, you had the people who were building sophisticated statistical models, like applied statistics, which is kind of the name before analytics, but you had people building applied statistical models, and you had people putting together like a dashboard in Excel and be like, well, we're doing analytics. And just like, well, it's a very different, it's a very, very different thing that you're doing. And I feel that AI is at that same stage where you have people who are touting, oh my Lord, we have the most sophisticated models here that are going to optimize this and that. And we have other things that are, hey, we're going to kind of help you write an email. And I get it. I'm not saying that there's not sophistication behind those models, but it's very different applications, and it means such different things to different people. But we tend to use this term as like a blanket. Oh, AI is going to fix everything, and as long as you have AI, everything's gonna be better. But I often ask myself, like, what do you mean, like, as long as we have AI? What is AI? Like, what are you trying to do? And I think it comes back to the root that a lot of the times, and in a pricing setting and in a non-pricing setting, because I've seen it both times, is we're starting to implement these solutions, but we haven't sat back and asked ourselves, what is the problem that we are trying to solve? What are we trying to do? Are we trying to be more efficient? Are we trying to have a better strategy? What is it that we are trying to do? Yet a lot of the times we're just throwing stuff at the wall and saying, well, AI is there, so it's going to be better. I'm not sure that's going to be the case.
I think it's a good point in that when we talk about efficiency, AI can enable a lot of things to if there's a lot of repeatable processes. Now, when we start to get into much more subtle strategy, how we're going out there and executing in the market, it's tougher, right? And you need to, because I really like where Satya went with it, and he was talking about, well, what are the returns that are generating from this?
A simple
And
question, simple question, right?
100%. And thinking about how much mind share is this taking up within our organization? How much resources is this taking up within our organization? And what percentage of our growth is it driving? So I can 100% understand if we're talking about like, automating like the first steps of call centers and getting that cost out of the system, or how a file after you get a credit application, it's kind of going and it's routed through the system and we don't need all these manual processes. Like 100% understand those types of things because there's real ROI associated it. And usually it's, noticeably it's eliminating people time or processing time or whatnot. But when we get into some of the other things like, hey, we're going to help you uncover these pricing opportunities, or we're going to help you go after where you got pricing leverage. Yeah, let's look at the real numbers. Like, what did it drive, and what can you honestly, truly say that drove to the bottom line?
So I was with a group of senior leaders the other week, and different topics. We were talking about different things, but as is today the fashion, AI was all over the place. Everyone was talking about AI this, AI that. Everyone wanted an AI strategy. What are you guys doing in AI? And there was a simple question that was asked, and it was, well, we were talking a lot about AI. How much of your growth plan in your revenue or financial performance in the next year is tied to AI? And it was like crickets.
Mhm.
And it's one of those things that everybody seemed to be talking about, and everyone's building the plan to do it, but no one is building in the benefit that is going to yield. And I think when that question was asked, there was a real kind of silence that took over the room, because I don't think these senior leaders had kind of thought about that and the implications of that. But you know what, Avi? At the end of the day, I ask myself, are we going to look back on this conversation in 6 months, a year, 2 years? And will AI have had its Excel moment? I'm not sure if it ever will, but I could be totally wrong, and maybe we'll be proven wrong. But it'll be interesting to see how this journey continues over the next several months and into years.
100%. There's going to be still a ton of visibility on it, and it's pervasive. I mean, people are using it now,
100%.
so it's going to be an interesting thing to keep your eyes on.
Yeah. That's all we had for today, guys. Really appreciate you tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks.